Hello, my name is Minesh Parikh, and I'm the CEO of Lippman Hearn. Thank you for joining the virtual AMA Higher Ed this year. Of course, these are strange times, and we're all at our homes watching this conference. I'm here in my office at home, but there's plenty of good content like previous years at this year's AMA as well. And we hope that you will join us and watch all the content that folks have to share, and as well as the rest of this video where we're going to share some exciting news about some work that some of the things that we've been working on. So with that, let me give you a little bit of context for Lippman Hearn if you're not aware of who we are. We're a full service marketing communications agency here in Chicago. Of course, as I said, I'm in my home right now, and the rest of our folks are all remote as well. But we focus on three main areas: brand marketing, philanthropic marketing, and enrollment marketing. And as it relates to those challenges for our clients, we help them with anything from institutional identities to campaign identities, brand strategy, as well as enrollment marketing communications. And that includes communications planning, communications reviews and audits, as well as other elements to help the client bring their brand to life to their audiences. And now I'm excited to introduce you to some of my colleagues who will share findings and implications from a national survey around diversity, equity, and inclusion.
Given what's going on in the country today and knowing all the challenges that higher education has always kind of faced, we thought it would be smart to really get a better understanding of how marketers in higher education are really viewing diversity, equity, and inclusion.
As we have been following what's happening in the national conversation around diversity, equity, and inclusion, and specifically in higher education, and seeing so many of our clients thinking about how to grapple with and tackle some really challenging issues, we've been really thinking from a communications perspective. What are the implications and what are the learnings that we can share?
And now we're focusing a little bit more on how this particular study we've done is more focused on communicators and advancement professionals in higher education really view diversity on their own campuses, what they see as the strengths, the challenges, and the opportunities to move forward. And we're excited about it because it provides some insights, but it also gives us a foundation to really talk to more clients about diversity, equity, inclusion as well. Because we know that particularly as students begin to come back on campus in more meaningful numbers, it's going to be a big topic. The students are going to drive it for sure. We've already heard from a lot of college administrators who are concerned about it and want to know how to gauge that interest, how to better address some of those concerns. And we think the survey tool that we've developed is going to be very helpful for that.
I think it's become the big sort of organizing idea for a lot of people, for a lot of different organizations in a lot of different ways. And so it isn't just a matter of making sure that you have sort of the right kind of head count in your storytelling. You know, it's about thinking about what equity means in your organization or your institution.
For me, what I think a big part of the focus is as institutions are thinking about DE&I from a strategic perspective for their entire institutions, developing plans and task forces and committees, I think that marketers are thinking about what are the implications for marketing? What are the communications implications, and how can they bring these strategic imperatives to life?
The survey is just one of the tools that Lippman Hearn has put together in our efforts to really help our clients address diversity, equity, and inclusion. And it's really kind of a three-part process when we are really doing all of it for a client. We'll start off where we actually do an audit of the kind of work they've been doing to kind of gauge where our clients are in diversity. How have they been communicating to their audiences? How have they been representing? Have they been putting forth a reasonable aspirational presentation of diversity on their campuses, or are they lacking? Then we follow up with the survey to really kind of dive a little bit deeper to understand why that is. Or is it because of certain departments, or does enrollment do things a certain way versus the way advancement does it? Does university relations kind of do it differently too? So we're trying to identify where the strengths are, where the concerns are. And then the third phase is really when we come in to provide consultation and really give some guidance in terms of what can you do as next steps to help improve diversity, equity, and inclusion communication on your campus.
I am really glad to be a part of this conversation. I'm Tyonne Anderson. I'm a project manager and producer here at Lippman Hearn. Most of the time I'm responsible for sourcing the types of creative partners to that you need to kind of make the visuals happen, to make the essence of what it is that you really want to communicate happen.
We have had clients who have come to us for years to look at how their campus diversity is reflected in their communications, whether it's appropriate, whether it's aspirational, or whether they're not reflecting their communities as they exist or as they want them to be. So we've spent a lot of time over the years really thinking about how to reflect diversity in marketing and communications, whether that's student recruitment materials, alumni materials, or other institutional communications. And so now, as this focus has honed in on something of real strategic importance to institutions, we have a great foundation for
actually articulating those goals and benchmarking and all of these milestones in DEI work is really important internally too. And so getting the buy-in from internal teams, internal stakeholders, just makes for a stronger effort overall.
When we are at the table deciding what to do for an end product, it's saying, okay, this is the type of perspective that I'm looking for to execute this project. I need someone who can elevate this in this way. What type of portfolios are out there that I can take a look at that will give me that perspective? So wherever the pool we're going to for these portfolios, we need to be able to see all of that representation. And a lot of the times that doesn't happen.
One of the things we found in the survey is that there seems to be a real lack of clear measures of effectiveness or progress as it relates to DEI initiatives. So while there's definite acknowledgement that these initiatives are institutional priorities and are extremely important to institutions, the respondents generally felt like they weren't sure how results were being measured and they weren't being communicated back. So it's a challenge when people across an institution are investing so much time and energy in something that's so important and don't really have a sense of what effect they're having or what the outcomes are. So that's a real area of opportunity to think about how to not only measure effectiveness of what's being undertaken, but to communicate it back to the entire community so that the strides that are being made are shared throughout the community.
Absolutely. Another thing that I think we found pretty interesting too, and on the one hand, it's not that surprising, but it's very indicative of the challenges within higher education. Similar to the society, the white folks in our survey thought that overall, their colleges were doing a better job on diversity communication than the Black folks and the people of color in there. And that mimics what we've seen nationally. So it's not a surprise in that sense, but at the same time, it does say that, we've got to get those folks kind of talking a little bit more because people from the same campuses are having very, very different views based on their racial identities and how they view things. And so in a lot of ways, it's an encouraging opportunity for the majority population to perhaps listen more to some of their own people of color on campus, not just kind of take them as one vote of the 10 or 20 people in there, but take it even more sincerely and really listen to them very carefully because they're clearly a little bit more in tune to it perhaps, and probably more aware given their own personal experiences and life experiences.
I think we all have to learn a different, or at least enlarge our vocabularies when we're talking about equity, because it's a really a different way of talking about bringing forward voices. What does opportunity mean? Opportunities become a word that has a lot more sort of a deeper and a richer meaning than I think it ever had before. And so I think that's really, it's really important to think about the words that we choose and the way that we talk about this, because it really requires a different kind of storytelling, I think.
As Marcom professionals, you have the opportunity to expand your own personal Rolodex of different corporations to seek when there's certain types of work that you want done. There are vendors lists. Expand your own Rolodex by, again, going out and looking at the type of talent that is out there to satisfy whatever your communications needs are. I'm always looking at different talent in anything that I need. Any project that we have, we're evaluating different artists. We're evaluating different producers by the work that they have out there. I will say this, in this age of social media, it's made things a lot easier. So again, as advice to anyone in Marcom, go out there and look at some of their social media posts, look at some of their works, because a lot of the times those portfolios are not going to jump out at you in that traditional pipeline that we talk about.
Another finding that's related to that, and I think is probably a contributing factor, is that our survey suggests that Black and white participants don't necessarily have a shared definition of what diversity even means. That both groups indicated that race is the most important aspect of diversity. There was consistency and alignment there. However, there was a clear trend that emerged that white participants were more likely to include other factors when thinking about diversity. For example, age or veteran status or sexual orientation or gender identity were rated much more likely to be included as factors of diversity among white respondents.
We know from our work that higher education never really has all the resources it should have to accomplish the very task that it's trying to do. And particularly when it comes to communication of DE&I efforts, it really is extreme. It was one of the lowest ranked items in terms of how people thought that they were getting enough funding to actually do the work. And white respondents thought that only 30% of white respondents felt they had enough money to actually do that. And only 9% of Black respondents felt that way, which is pretty striking in the sense that in an environment where we know in general, higher ed is always trying to stretch to find enough money to actually get things done. This clearly tells us that in general, there really isn't enough money being put toward this. And if things are going to change, that's something that's going to have to change too.
And that lack of resources is likely a contributing factor to the fact that our survey suggests that there isn't a clear best path forward yet, that although lots of institutions are trying lots of different things to communicate about their DEI efforts, if they don't have the resources and don't have the measurement tools and aren't clear on what's been working, it's hard to know which communications channels have been the most effective either. So a lot of different approaches have been tried, but our survey suggests that no one's quite clear on what the best mix of tactics to use are quite yet.
Yeah, like Kristen says, it's sort of like people have been really trying to throw a lot of spaghetti against the wall and seeing what sticks. And it seems like that's kind of accelerating because of the attention that the topic has been getting over the last few months. So hopefully through our work, we'll be able to kind of fine tune to find the items that are really most effective and start to steer more of our clients in that direction.
I think communicating with intentionality and transparency to your internal teams will be really important. Certainly there's no cookie cutter path.
Intentionality around diversity, equity, and inclusion in communications to different audiences also was a little inconsistent according to our survey. It seems that most communicators feel that the focus is being placed on communications with students, both prospective students and current students, more than any of their other audiences. So our white respondents were most likely to see the institutional commitment to DEI reflected in things like events and activities and in student recruitment materials. They were also slightly more likely to feel that the institutional commitment is reflected in alumni communications and university relations activities. Other respondents, and particularly the Black respondents, did not feel that these other audiences were receiving quite the same attention as it relates to diversity communications.
When we, hire one person to tackle this, we've checked that box and it's like, oh, diversity is done. We've got Sarah in here thinking about that, but it's not the case. And it actually often then undermines the actual efforts.
You can make people feel like they are seen. It achieves that goal of authenticity that we always are striving for, right? That we always hope that we can convey about an institution. Are you holding up a mirror to someone, or are you just kind of using them as a prop?
As Marcom professionals, when you look to get a project done, there is an expansive network of creative partners out there that you can find, one by tapping into us, Lippman Hearn, or again, attending conferences, meeting different people within that creative community. Start talking, start having those conversations. Again, word of mouth is always another good tactic in sourcing creative partners, or those that can give you a really, really different perspective on where you want to be with your communications.
Not one person who can come in and make a place diverse, equitable, and inclusive all in one foul swoop. So just being really intentional with how you communicate the goals, some of the hurdles and struggles with your folks internally is really important.
This has been a year for sure, from the pandemic to what has transpired in our country over the summer with racial injustice and systemic injustice. And there's a lot of work to be done. But what I'm inspired by and have faith in is the role that higher education plays at the core of all of this as we try to become a stronger democracy.
While diversity, equity, and inclusion can be a contentious concern and even a big issue for a lot of campuses, most of the folks involved sincerely, genuinely are trying to make their campuses and frankly the world a better place.
It's always going to be a work in progress, but I think that it does kind of help to sort of see how a story can be told in a different way, and how you can really honor somebody's voice.
Being open to sharing with people like us and your colleagues, your successes, your hurdles. I think we all have a lot to learn from one another. And this is work we can do. It's going to take a lot of effort.
And that's the kind of thing we really get excited about, because it does say that there's a lot of hope and optimism here, even when there are particular challenges that are not at all easy to deal with. But the way people are approaching things really gives us a lot of hope for the future.
You can't make up authenticity. You have to let it happen. You have a responsibility to the people whose stories you want to use to really be the kind of organization that they want their stories to be part of.
I've been fortunate enough to have been really involved with the American Marketing Association's Higher Ed Symposium for a long, long time, and I'm past co-chair of it. And I can tell you quite genuinely that all of the people that I've met in the organization are fully committed to the idea of diversity and fully committed to the idea of giving everyone the best opportunities to succeed. And that is only going to happen if you can communicate effectively. So the colleges that are really doing this and are on the forefront right now.
And that, to me, is why I'm eternally grateful for being here with you and mingling with all of you, because the work you do and your organizations do is critical as we try to move forward.